I want you to picture this for a moment. Your mom has started withdrawing from conversations. She smiles politely at family dinners, but rarely joins in anymore. You think maybe her memory's slipping, but then you realize she's just not hearing what anyone's saying. That's the quiet reality for millions of older adults today. Hearing loss is one of the most common health issues in aging, yet it's also one of the most ignored. And in senior living communities, it's become what many experts call a hidden crisis, affecting communication, safety, emotional well being, and how seniors connect with caregivers. Hi, I'm Corpus, a senior transition specialist and real estate expert based in the San Francisco Bay Area. As part of the sandwich generation myself, I know how overwhelming it can feel to juggle raising kids while caring for aging parents. I created this podcast, Simplify Senior Transitions, to make these conversations easier. My promise to you, every episode brings real stories, practical tools, and expert insights to help families move forward with confidence instead of stress. Today, we're talking about hearing, but not just hearing. We're talking about connection, dignity, and quality of life. My guest is Debbie Clark, an audiologist with Pacific Hearing Service, a highly respected Bay Area practice that continues to be locally and female-owned, and the co-founder of Pacific Hearing Connection, a nonprofit providing hearing care for underserved and low-income populations. Debbie was previously co-owner of Pacific Hearing until late 2024, and after selling the practice to two younger audiologists, she continues to work closely with patients and mentor the next generation of hearing care professionals. With over 4 decades of experience in audiology, Debbie has worked in clinics, hospitals, and senior living communities, helping thousands of older adults stay engaged with the world around them. She's also built innovative on-site programs that bring hearing care directly to where seniors live, including independent living, assisted living, and memory care. Today, we'll explore why hearing loss is often misdiagnosed as dementia, how technology and compassion can restore connection, and what families can do to protect their loved ones' hearing and their independence. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we help families navigate senior living, real estate, and everything in between. Hosted by Senior Transition Specialist Dale Corpus, this show brings you expert insights, real solutions, and stress-free strategies to make senior transitions simple. Ready to dive in? Let's go.
And we're back, everybody. Debbie, welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. And it's really nice to be here.
Great. Can you start by sharing what first drew you into the field of audiology?
Wow. A lot of audiologists in my generation stumbled into it. I started out searching for what I wanted to do. And I was in undergraduate school. I thought about speech pathology. And from there, I was introduced to audiology. And I just really connected with that. It seemed like a good fit for me.
Okay. And you've been doing this work for 40 years, quite a long time.
Yes.
What has kept your passion alive after all these years?
Audiology is a field that includes interesting technology, so much biology research, understanding the brain, understanding how the ear works, and also a lot of psychology. So it's this multifaceted field. And I'm a people person. It's a field that connects people to other people by improving their hearing. And so it's interesting and rewarding.
Yeah. Now, you were co-owner of Pacific Hearing Service until recently.
Yes.
What was the transition like, and what has it meant to see the practice continue under new ownership?
We were very fortunate in that we have, as employees, 2 audiologists that were interested in becoming owners. And I think that's rare. So we really do feel very lucky about that. And these 2 audiologists they're just great. They worked for us for many years. So they learned our ways of doing things. They still hold the values that we held as we were growing Pacific Hearing Service. But they have these new and innovative ideas that we never would have done. It's really been fun for over this last year to watch them take the realm and be available as mentors when they need us, and they need us less and less as time goes on. It was a slow transition over a few years, and now they've taken over and they're just doing a great job.
You know, now that you're not the owner, but you're kind of just seeing all these new ideas come to life, that must be fun to see and to see it grow in a different way, right? Yeah.
It really is fun to see. It's important for business to get new and fresh ideas. So they're doing, in my opinion, a wonderful job of hanging on to the values that we held dear as we were growing the practice, things that were important to us, but they have new and innovative ideas that my business partner and I never would have
Yeah.
embraced. So it's great.
Yeah. Hey, what inspired the creation of Pacific Hearing Connection, your nonprofit arm?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. So years ago, I would say my business partner, Jane Baxter, and I were feeling frustrated because we were seeing a lot of people who either couldn't afford hearing aids.
Yeah.
Hearing aids, they're expensive, or we saw a lot of people who were on Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal does cover hearing aids, but they were getting low-end technology. They weren't getting a lot of follow-up care. And nothing against Medi-Cal providers. They do a great job, but reimbursement with Medi-Cal is very low. And so they can't possibly offer the same kind of service that a private practice would offer. So we were talking to a business consultant who was helping us with our business, and we were expressing this frustration to her. And she said, "Why don't you start a nonprofit?" And that planted a little seed of thought. And then a couple of years later, we met a woman who was starting her own nonprofit. And that turned into kind of a big, I know that's another big story, but she said, "Hey, I'll help you. I'll help you
Yeah.
start your nonprofit." And she did. And so Pacific Hearing Connection was born.
Excellent. Now, you've seen firsthand how hearing impacts communication, confidence, and even relationships. What's one story that really stayed with you?
Yeah. There are many, many stories I can tell you. But one story that really does stick with me is a guy that we worked with. This was early in the years of Pacific Hearing Connection, a nonprofit. He was one of our early patients. He came to us probably in his mid-50s, really significant hearing loss, couldn't
Yeah.
afford hearing aids. He had lost his job
Yeah.
and he was interviewing. I don't even know how I made it through the interviews, but obviously he struggled and
Yeah.
he couldn't get a job. So we fit him with hearing aids, and a few months after we fit him with hearing aids, I got an email from him and he said, "Debbie, I want you to know that I wake up every day thanking you for my hearing,
Mm.
and I got a job." And that just meant so much to me because I knew it really changed his life.
I love that. I love that story. Now, why do you think hearing loss is so misunderstood, especially in the senior living space?
That's a really good question. Hearing loss is an invisible handicap. You
Okay.
can't look at a person and know that they have hearing loss. So it does often get mixed up with dementia. If I have hearing loss and I don't hear what you say or I misunderstand what you say, I might seem like I'm ignoring you, or I
Right.
might answer inappropriately, which makes me seem like I'm losing it. I think it's misunderstood in many ways because it's invisible and you just can't look at a person and know. So you start to make assumptions about who that person is, and the assumptions may not be correct.
Okay. Now, how common is hearing loss among seniors, and what are the biggest warning signs families should look out for?
Oh gosh, let's see. So people in their 60s
Okay.
say the rate of hearing loss is roughly 45 to 50%. In the entire population, hearing loss is about 10 to 15%. But as you get older, of course, that increases quite a bit. So people who are in their 80s, for example, about 80 to 90% of people who are age 80 or higher have some degree of hearing loss. So it is very, very common in the older population.
Okay. Many families assume that parents' forgetfulness means early dementia when it might just be hearing loss.
Right.
How can families tell the difference?
That's a good question. There are some signs of hearing loss. For example, if they're turning the TV up louder than everybody else in the room wants, and that's a sign. Often people who have hearing loss will tend to talk loud. That's not always true, but that is often a sign. But I think one of the most important things that they can do is just encourage that person to get a baseline hearing test,
Okay.
because that's the real way, having the hearing evaluated. And then you just know you have data. You're not playing a
Okay.
guessing game.
What are some of the consequences when hearing loss goes untreated emotionally, socially, and even medically?
Yeah. Back in, I think it was in 2009, 2008, 2009, the National Council on Aging did a extensive study, people who had untreated hearing loss. And they found that people who have untreated hearing loss were more likely to experience depression,
Okay.
paranoia, interestingly, and isolation. So we know that people who have hearing loss and don't treat it are at risk for feeling disconnected with the people around them.
Yeah.
But also about 10 to 15 years ago, there were some really interesting studies that came out. One of the first studies came out of Johns Hopkins that correlated hearing loss and cognitive decline.
Okay.
And so we know that people who have hearing, even mild hearing loss, their rate of cognitive decline is twice as much faster than people who have normal hearing. So we don't fully understand what causes that correlation, but it's very, very clear that there is a correlation between hearing loss and cognition. And there also have been some more recent studies that show that when people treat that hearing loss, most commonly with hearing aids, then those cognitive changes slow down and sometimes even stop.
Okay. And actually, I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I forgot to ask you, where's your office based out of and where do you help people?
Oh, that's a great question. We have two offices, one in Menlo Park
Okay.
and one in Los Altos. And our nonprofit, Pacific Hearing, so that's Pacific Hearing Service.
Okay.
Our nonprofit, Pacific Hearing Connection, comes out of, we see patients in our Los Altos office. So our Los
Okay.
Altos office donates space for that. In addition to that, my business partner, longtime business partner, Jade Baxter, and I go to several senior living
Yeah.
communities. And we have kind of a mobile audiology clinic that we go to specific retirement communities.
Got it. Is it mainly that you're serving Santa Clara County or is that also San Mateo County as well?
We have some retirement communities in both Santa Clara and San Mateo County.
Okay,
And we
perfect.
do also sometimes see people in their homes.
Now, let's talk more about your work in senior living communities. What made you start offering on-site audiology programs inside independent living, assisted living, and memory care communities?
Yeah, and also skilled nursing. Actually, our patients asked us to. So, of course, we have these two physical offices, and so many of our patients live in these retirement communities, and they have transportation problems. Many of them, and especially if they've gotten into assisted living or skilled nursing, sometimes they can't. It's very cumbersome for them to
Yeah.
leave, and they have lots of doctor's appointments. So they started asking us, and we started with one or two retirement communities, and then the word sort of got out, and we started being asked more and more. So now we serve 7 different retirement communities.
Perfect. What have you learned about how hearing issues affect group activities, dining rooms, or even safety in these environments?
Yeah, I would say the 2 top complaints that we get from people who live in retirement communities
Yeah.
are the dining room,
Yeah.
and I don't care where it is. Every single retirement community we go to, people complain about hearing their friends when they're in the dining area.
Yeah.
And then the other one is lecture halls.
Okay.
Almost all of them have some sort of auditorium, and many people have difficulty hearing in those. So those are issues for a lot of people. And you mentioned safety. We know that people who have hearing loss, they also are at greater risk for falls. So one of the things we talk to our older seniors about, if they're unsure if they want to treat their hearing loss, not only does it help them to be more connected, but it may help them with their balance as well.
You mentioned that hearing aid maintenance is often a huge challenge for seniors. Why is follow-up care so critical?
Well, this is something we knew, but it really drove this home for us when we started seeing people in retirement
Yeah.
communities. I cannot tell you how many times we've had people come to see us when we're there in the retirement communities. They think their hearing aids are broken, or maybe they don't even know that their hearing aids are broken, but they're clogged up with wax, so they're not functioning anymore. Their ears are clogged up with wax. We sometimes go into memory care. Often those people, their batteries are dead. So someone has forgotten to change the batteries. Maybe the microphones are broken in the hearing aids.
Yeah.
And so when we go in and clean the hearing aids, we run tests on them to make sure that they're running up to specifications. And it just helps them to be more engaged on a regular basis. We have some people we see every 2 to 3 weeks just to clean their hearing aids for them.
Okay. How do you help caregivers and staff get supporting residents with hearing aids or hearing loss?
Well, we find that a lot of the caregivers know a certain amount. They're able to help people who have dexterity issues, for example, get their hearing aids in their ears, but they may not know how to clean them or to maintain them. So when we see people one-on-one with their caregiver, we'll show them how to clean their hearing aids and some basic maintenance things. We also try to do in-service trainings for people who work in retirement communities. So anytime we have an opportunity to train someone who works in that environment, we grab it.
Yeah. What do you wish every executive director or life enrichment director knew about integrating hearing care into their community culture?
Hearing loss is so isolating.
Okay.
And people who can't hear or who have hearing aids that aren't working properly are not as engaged. They're not going to take advantage of programs that the retirement communities offer. They're going to be lonelier. By offering this service, those people will be able to hear better. They'll be more connected. They'll be more involved in their communities. They'll be more active members in their environment.
Right.
It's a huge gift to those people to be able to offer hearing care.
The hearing aid market has changed a lot in recent years. What should families know about over-the-counter hearing aids versus seeing a professional audiologist?
Yeah, audiologists, we have mixed feelings about the over-the-counter hearing aids. On the one hand, having over-the-counter hearing aids available means that there are more options. And when cost is a concern, the over-the-counter hearing aids are much less expensive. Perhaps it's a way to dip your toe in the water if you're feeling uncertain or threatened by getting hearing aids. What we fear about that is because we do know that care and maintenance and education, we spend a lot of time educating our patients about hearing loss and hearing care. That's so important. And we fear that people will try hearing aids because they've gotten over the counter, find out they don't work, and then say, oh, I tried it, and then not move forward. The best case scenario is they try that, they dip their foot in, they go, oh, this is better. I'm going to get really good professional care. But we worry about people trying it and then giving up.
For families worried about cost, what are some affordable or nonprofit options through programs like Pacific Hearing Connection?
So first of all, I would say that there's a wide range of price in hearing aids. In our practice, because our practices are in very affluent areas, a lot of the people we serve choose to get the higher end hearing aids, which tend to be more expensive. But every hearing clinic has options available to them that are less expensive. And so I would say, I always tell my patients to choose the best technology that's in their comfort zone price-wise. And then we try to work with them. So number one is just communicate with your hearing care provider and tell them what your limitations are. And then they can help to advise you. Medi-Cal does cover hearing aids. So if you are on Medi-Cal, there are Medi-Cal providers. And then we, as we mentioned earlier, we started our nonprofit Pacific Hearing Connection. Our sweet spot for that is people who maybe don't quite qualify for Medi-Cal, but still can afford hearing aids. And we use a sliding scale. Most of our hearing aids are donated. Many of them are donated by the patients in our practice Pacific Hearing Service. And we use a sliding scale, and based on a person's income and the number of members in their household, we may sell hearing aids for a couple $100 each, or $500, $600, $700 each, depending on their income. We do in our nonprofit, we do also ask people to do volunteer work to help pay for their hearing aids. We call it the circle of giving. And so we have volunteers who volunteer their time, and we ask people to do a little bit of volunteer work to help pay for their hearing aids.
Okay. Can you explain how your hearing club model works inside senior communities and how it makes care more accessible?
Yeah. And so first, I do want to make a clear distinction between our nonprofit, which is Pacific Hearing Connection, and then our regular practice, which is Pacific Hearing Service. And the work that we do in retirement communities is under the umbrella of Pacific Hearing Service. The way we work in the retirement communities is we've developed something, we call it the Hearing Club. And it's an annual subscription. So they pay an annual fee, and it basically covers all of their care. So we see them on a regular basis. We clean their ears. We do a hearing check. We check their hearing aids. We do electroacoustic checks of their hearing aids to make sure they're working, just everything that they need, consultations. We also, for people who live in assisted living, skilled nursing, and memory care, we have a point person in their family so that we communicate with. So maybe mom is in assisted living, and we are seeing her every 3-4 weeks to take care of her hearing aids. Every time we see mom, we send daughter or son or whoever it is, text or an email and say, hey, we saw your mom today. This is what we did. Just want you to know, and we'll say maybe a little extra something like she was working on a jigsaw puzzle. It looked like she was engaging with people. We try to give them a little information about what's going on with mom or dad.
Yeah. What role does ongoing technology education play for seniors who are intimidated by modern hearing aids?
Yeah, people, we often hear from people, oh, I'm not a technology
Yeah.
person. It needs to be so simple. I don't want anything too complicated. But the interesting thing about that is the higher end hearing aids are actually designed to be simpler because they're more automatic. So
Okay.
as technology has improved, it used to be you'd have to push a button on a hearing aid in order to activate some maybe noise management properties or something like that. But now the hearing aids are so smart. They analyze the environment. Many of them have accelerometers in them, so they know if you're moving your head or if you're walking. And so the hearing aids are making automatic changes without you even knowing it. So if you can get them in your ears, or if someone can put them in your ears, you can just let the hearing aids do their job. Sometimes people are intimidated by the fact that they're connected to their smartphones.
Yep.
That is an optional feature. So even though you might have hearing aids that can be used with your smartphone, you don't have to use that feature.
Yep.
You can just keep it simple.
Okay. Why do you think so many older adults hesitate to get hearing help, even when they know they need it?
Stigma is a strong, strong thing.
Yeah.
And denial too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we still wrestle with stigma. A lot of people think that it's cost that keeps people from getting hearing aids, but when you look at places like in England, for example, hearing aids are covered by the government, and
Mhm.
yet the rate of adoption is not really much higher than it is here in the United States. I think a lot of people just remember the old days when hearing aid technology was terrible and people looked dumb. People who had hearing loss, they were cut off and they didn't have a lot of options available to them. I
Mhm.
have seen, for example, baby boomers,
Yeah.
I believe are more open to getting hearing aids than the silent generation was, than their parents were. And I think it's because they've seen the struggles that their parents had. And they also are more comfortable with the technology. They're not as intimidated as the older generation might have been. So I
Okay.
think we're slowly getting there. We're slowly overcoming the stigma, but it's still deeply ingrained in our culture.
Well, a related question then is, how can families approach the subject without making their parents feel embarrassed or defensive?
Yeah, that is really an important question because sometimes I see such tension in families and I see kids going, Mom, you need to get your hearing
Yeah.
tested. And mom's going, no, 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 and then it just cuts off communication. There's a book that I love by Joseph Grenny called Crucial Conversations. I don't know if you know of that book. He also does trainings for people. And one of the things that he says is start with heart. And I love that because it's a way to start that conversation.
Yeah.
I recommend that book if you have a loved one that's struggling with hearing loss because there are a lot of great tips for how to gently approach the person without putting them on the defensive. Once you put them on the defensive, it is hard to overcome that. Gentle things like, "Hey, mom," or "Hey, dad, I noticed that when I said this to you, you didn't seem to understand what I was saying. I'm a little worried about your hearing. Would you consider getting a hearing test?" Being gentle about it instead
Yeah.
of, "When are you gonna get your hearing tested?" Which makes people not wanna do anything.
Let's pivot a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Pacific Hearing Connection.
Mhm.
Tell me more about Pacific Hearing Connection's mission. Who does it serve, and how can listeners support it?
Right. Our goal is to help people hear who otherwise would not be able to have access to hearing care, whether it's because of being underinsured or because of income. Those are the people that we want to help. Ways that you could support it. If you know someone who is not getting hearing aids because, or not addressing their hearing needs because they feel like they can't afford hearing aids, we want to help those people because we don't want anyone to go without hearing because they can't afford it. Of course, we take donations. We work on grants and donations. What we bring in through the nonprofit is pretty minimal. So grants and donations, individual donations are how we keep things going.
you've also done international outreach work, right? So what was that experience like bringing hearing care to people around the world?
Yeah, that's been an amazing experience. So Jane and I joined an organization called Entheos years ago. And this is an organization that is kind of like Doctors Without Borders, but for audiologists. And so
Yeah.
the team goes to many, many different countries to serve people who otherwise wouldn't have access to hearing care. So I personally have, over the last several years, have gone to Zambia, and that's been where my heart has been over the last few years. And it is truly a life-changing experience. We go to a very rural part of Zambia called
Okay.
Chibambo, and we work alongside community leaders there. So from a cultural experience, just to work side by side
Yeah.
with the people from those areas, you learn so much and you learn to appreciate those cultures. And the people there are so appreciative and they're so filled with joy. And so we're working in these areas where people have nothing. They're living in huts with dirt floors and they're struggling to have access to food, yet they are so full of joy when we see them. And it's just a wonderful experience.
Nice. What are some of the most rewarding success stories you've witnessed from your nonprofit programs?
Ah, gosh, well, I already told you the story of the gentleman who got his job. That was through our nonprofit. We also had a young woman who was a barista,
Okay.
and I don't know how she was surviving with her job, but she was employed, but she was struggling. She was really struggling with her work. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we do is ask people to do volunteer work as part of paying for their hearing aids. And she chose to do some volunteer work at a food bank. And she became really involved with that food bank. And I think she really loved being able to do that volunteer work, and being able to hear again helped her to be more engaged both at her job and she got more engaged in her community.
Nice. How do you balance running a thriving practice while keeping service and accessibility at the heart of everything you do?
Gosh, it's a lot, but
Yeah.
you have to love what you do. If you don't love what you do, then you don't have the energy to do it. And so I have loved what I've done over the years. I love working with people. I love seeing the changes that happen in their lives when they can hear again, when they can hear music again, when they can hear the birds again, when they can hear their loved ones again. It is so rewarding. And so, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. My business partner and I sometimes look at each other and go, what are we doing? But we love what we do. And that's how you do it.
Okay. Let's segue into just advice for families.
Mm.
What's the number one piece of advice you'd give to families who suspect a parent or grandparent is losing their hearing?
Be gentle. Know that it may be a sensitive topic for that person. Be aware of the fact that especially older people, they are losing their independence,
Yeah.
all the time, oftentimes losing their homes, right? And moving into retirement communities. They're
Right.
losing their driver's license. They're
Right.
losing control of their lives. And so they're in a very vulnerable time of their life. And so the hearing loss is like one more thing that they're dealing with. But treating hearing loss is actually a way that they can get more control. If they can treat the hearing loss, they can be more engaged in conversations. They can be more engaged in the decision making that's going on all around them all the time. And so just approach them. The idea of a baseline hearing test sometimes is non-threatening to them. That's a nice place to start. They can, if mom is saying, no, 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 my hearing's fine. Well, let's just get a baseline and then we can track it over time.
Right.
Just taking that first step is sometimes all you need to do.
Okay. What can adult children do today to help prevent further hearing loss in their parents?
And in themselves too, because hearing loss can run in families. Often it does. There have been some studies that have shown that people who lead healthy lifestyles are less likely to have hearing loss.
Okay.
And a lot of this is probably related to what we call comorbidities. So, for example,
Okay.
people who have diabetes are at higher risk of hearing loss. And we think it has to do with blood flow.
Okay.
People who have heart disease also are at higher risk for hearing loss. So anything you can do, exercise, eating healthy food, all of the things that we do that we know we need to do to stay healthy can also help your hearing. And of course, protecting your hearing from noise. Loud noise is, as we all know, very dangerous for your hearing.
Mm-hmm. When should a family consider professional testing, and what should they expect from that first appointment?
I think it is good to get your first hearing test somewhere
Okay.
in your 60s, maybe 65 or so. Get a baseline at that time, and then every 2, 3 years after that, depending on what the audiologist advises you at that time. Let's see, what was the other part of that question? When should you do it? And
What should they expect from that first
or what should
appointment?
they expect? Yeah, sorry. First of all, expect a very thorough history. The audiologist that you work with should ask you lots of questions about your health and about your listening needs. What are
Okay.
the environments you're in, that sort of thing. So spend some time, be prepared to answer some questions. There's some testing that we do that look at mechanically how your ears work. Is your eardrum intact? Things like that. And then a hearing evaluation that takes maybe 30 minutes or so that gives us information about how loud you need sounds in order to hear them. How clear is speech? That's an important aspect of hearing testing. And also, how do you hear in noise? Because some people hear better in noise than others. A lot of that has to do with the way our brains process sound.
Okay. How can realtors, senior living professionals, placement agents, transition specialists partner with audiologists to better serve clients?
Huh. You know, I think being aware, if you do see signs of hearing loss, maybe have a list of hearing clinics, audiologists that you can be ready to give to people. Talk to when you're talking to retirement, executives in retirement communities and places like that.
Yeah.
Let them know that this is a service that they could provide
Okay.
to their residents.
And finally, as we come to a close, any final words, and how can someone reach out to you if they have any questions?
Yeah, I guess my final words would be just be aware that hearing loss is isolating. People who have hearing loss, it is a quality of life issue, and they do feel disconnected from the people around them and the things that they want to hear. Be aware of that and be a partner with that person in helping them address their hearing needs. Our practice is Pacific Hearing Service.
Yeah.
We have offices in Los Altos and in Menlo Park. You can go to our website. You could give us a call, or all of the information is on our website in terms of how to get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. If you know someone who is concerned about the cost of hearing aids, our nonprofit also has a website, which is pacifichearingconnection.org, and all the information is there as well.
Perfect. Debbie, thank you so much for joining me today and shining a light on such an overlooked topic. What you and your team at Pacific Hearing Service and Pacific Hearing Connection are doing goes far beyond hearing. You're restoring connection, dignity, and joy for seniors and their families. And for everyone listening, remember, hearing loss doesn't just affect sounds, it affects relationships. If your loved one seems withdrawn or confused, don't assume it's memory loss. It might be something far simpler and far more treatable. And if your loved one is considering senior living and you're also trying to figure out what to do with their home, let's talk. Schedule a free consultation and learn more about my services at www.simplifyseniortransitions.com or DM me anytime on Instagram at Soul by Dale. Before we wrap up, I want to restate what this show is all about. My promise to you and every listener is to bring real stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you move forward with confidence instead of stress as you navigate senior care and housing transitions. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more families find the show and the resources they need. Thanks again for tuning in. Debbie, one last thank you for being on the show with me today.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And for everyone else, I'll see you on the next episode of Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we make these conversations easier, one story at a time.